right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Andile, we can go to the next slide. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Webb. I'm a Senior Technical Officer with the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition, where I have the incredible privilege of supporting our Menstrual Health Supplies Workstream. We are very excited for today's webinar, the first in a three-part series that RHSC is co-hosting with the African Coalition for Menstrual Health Management. Today we have some incredible speakers, all of whom you will see on the slide, who are going to talk a little bit about menstrual product standards, why they're important, and how you can start to work with them depending on your different roles. You can go to the next slide, Andile. For those of you who want to follow along today in a different language, we are using Wordly, an AI software that enables us to translate today's webinar into over 50 languages. If you would like to access Wordly, you can do that either by clicking the link that I just put in the chat, or you can use the Wordly app within Zoom that was also circulated through the chat. If you do have any difficulty accessing Wordly, or if you have any questions about Wordly, please go ahead and message me, Sarah Webb. You can send me a message if you have any questions, and I will be sure to help you sort things out. Next slide. And without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce our first speaker, Diana Nelson. As the Global Advocacy Director at Days for Girls International, Diana Nelson leads strategic advocacy efforts focused on advancing menstrual product standards, education, and comprehensive menstrual health support. She serves on the US ISO TC 338 committee, which you'll hear more about today, drawing from her experience helping develop South Africa's reusable pad standard, advocating for standards in Kenya, and participating in an international menstrual product standards project. Diana, over to you for our opening remarks.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you everyone for being here. You know, product quality standards exist for nearly everything we use in our daily lives, from medicines, packaged foods, makeup, cleaning supplies, for example. These standards serve as a benchmark to ensure that products meet essential safety, quality, and performance criteria, and menstrual products are no different. About 7 years ago, I had an experience in a Southern African country that cemented for me why menstrual product standards are necessary. A manufacturer had distributed a batch of reusable pads, but because no standard existed to test the product, they failed to meet the basic safety and quality benchmarks. The material didn't absorb as promised, and there were no instructions provided for how to use it, so the pads were worn longer than intended, causing irritation and soreness for many women and girls. The consequences of this were significant. The local manufacturer faced major setbacks, the government faced public scrutiny, and other reusable menstrual products were cast in doubt, leading to fear and hesitation among users, which perpetuated the reliance on other traditional and even less hygienic methods of managing periods. So this situation highlights why standards matter. Without them, consumers lack protection, manufacturers face uncertainty, and governments struggle to ensure safe and reliable products. It also hurts the broader market as consumers become more skeptical of new and innovative solutions. So what are menstrual product standards? Menstrual product standards set minimum requirements for key product characteristics like absorbency, material safety, durability, even instructions on how to use and care or dispose of the product. They serve as a technical guideline that ensures all products on the market meet a minimum level of safety and effectiveness. These standards also play a critical role in trade. Many countries limit imports to products that meet national or international benchmarks. Without clear and harmonized standards, manufacturers struggle with multiple, sometimes conflicting regulatory frameworks. So standards are just not technical guidelines. They're the foundation of informed choice, ensuring consumers can confidently select from a range of quality products. For safety, protecting users from unsafe or ineffective products, and for market growth, encouraging competition and innovation because there are clear guardrails within which products can be developed. Menstrual product standards exist at different levels. You have the national standards like Countries in South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia, they've developed their own standards or regulations, but these can vary widely from country to country. You have regional standards like the East African Community and even the African Organization for Standardization, or ARSO, which is another key regional standardization body. In fact, ARSO was formed in 1977 with the principal mandate to harmonize African standards in order to reduce technical barriers to trade and to promote trade both within and outside of Africa. And then you have international standards. The ISO is an independent, non-government organization that sets global standards for quality, safety, and efficiency. By establishing harmonized global benchmarks, it reduces trade barriers and supports cross-border commerce. ISO TC 338, which we'll talk about today, focuses on menstrual product standards to ensure safety and reliability worldwide. In the absence of harmonized standards, there's gaps. Some low quality products continue to circulate, putting people who menstruate at risk. In other cases, manufacturers struggle with inconsistent requirements across borders. A product that can meet the standard in one country might need redesigning to comply elsewhere. And that happened to our organization. And this raises costs and reduces the ability for manufacturers to manufacture at scale. This is why international standards are crucial. So why do we care about standards? As I mentioned earlier, from a user perspective, standards ensure people who menstruate can access safe, reliable menstrual products. And a key component of menstrual health is preference, the right of people who menstruate to make informed choices about which products they want to use to manage their period. Women and girls need access to a variety of qualities, not just an occasional distribution or a single type. One of the best ways to do this is to have product choice. And to have product choice means we need standards that make them safe. For the manufacturers, standards create a level playing field. They reduce barriers to market entry. Many small and medium-sized manufacturers struggle to expand due to inconsistent or non-existent regulations across countries. Clear and harmonized standards allow for fair competition and product improvement. For governments, the standards help governments and organizations procure safe and effective products, ensuring that public funds are spent on reliable and safe supplies. Additionally, governments that procure products aligned with established standards are less likely to face legal liability. And also for market growth, a well-regulated and predictable market encourages competition, leading to better products and more choices for consumers. When standards are in place, public procurement becomes more transparent and fair, allowing governments and organizations to purchase quality menstrual products with confidence. A study was done in 2020, and approximately 60% of women and girls in West and Central Africa, almost 70 million people, used purpose-made menstrual products like single-use pads at least some of the time. And this number is expected to increase substantially in the next decade. As demands grow, a strong supply chain is needed to ensure access to quality, affordable menstrual products. Standards are critical to balance consumer protection with market growth. By working together to establish and enforce strong international standards like TC 338, we can protect the consumers, support manufacturers, strengthen market competition, and create more equitable menstrual health solutions globally. And so with that, I'm really excited to introduce two of our speakers who are doing amazing work on helping our international standards. The first person I'd like to introduce is Jenny Acaralp, and she is a skilled project manager with extensive experience in leading both international and national standardization efforts, primarily in the healthcare area. In her role as a committee member for ISO TC 338, she is responsible for overall planning and organization of the committee's work with the chair. And this year, Jenny is also responsible for a twinning partnership between SIS and GSA Ghana in order to raise capacity and involvement in the ISO standardization, particularly with ISO TC 338 with menstrual products. And Gerda Larsson has spent over a decade on women's health, especially focused on menstrual health. She chairs the ISO TC 338 on menstrual products and has been actively leading the work to set global standards for menstrual products engaging with 47 countries. She's a co-founder and former CEO of The Case for Her, an investment portfolio amplifying the issues of menstruation and female sexual and health pleasure through funding and advocacy. And day to day, Gerda is now the CEO of Curtis Ventures in Stockholm and an active board member on many companies from startups to listed companies. She's a former board member of menstrual health companies like AFRIpads and Kasha. So it's with great pleasure I turn the time over to Jenny and Gerda.
Thank you so much, Diana, and it's great to be here. I'll let Jenny start and we'll present together. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you for inviting us today. Please, next slide. So me and Gerda are involved in the ISO Technical Committee for Menstrual Products, ISO TC 338. And we will give you a brief introduction and overview about what's going on within this committee. Next slide. So Diana has already introduced you to the world of standards, but I will start with explaining the standardization process for you shortly. And it's important to know that ISO in itself does not decide when to develop a new standard, but ISO responds to a request from the industry or the stakeholders, such as, for example, consumer groups. And it starts always with an idea, and from first idea or first proposal to publication, developing a standard usually takes about 3 years. And each ISO deliverable is assigned to a standards development track. It can be either 18, 24, or 36 months. And whichever track is chosen for the development, the process for ISO standards follows defined stages. And we are currently at bullet point number 4, working group drafting for the ever first standard for menstrual products, general and safety requirements. And that standard is developed in ISO TC 338 working group. And the work is done by the experts in the group. And the next stage is the committee draft, and it will be followed by a public inquiry draft. And hopefully we will have a final standard published in 2027. And so after the publication of the standard, it may be adopted by the ISO member countries. It's important to know that ISO standards are voluntary to implement and to use. We can move on to the next slide. So, and in the committee, we aim for a wide representation that includes all types of organizations, and it takes a lot of people to develop standards. And the standards are created by the people that will use them and are impacted by the standards. And the experts in the committee are from example, national authorities, small and medium enterprises, local authorities and regions, consumer organizations, and from research and academia. And to have a broad representation in the committee is important that we end up with developing high quality standards that are widely accepted and applicable. So, and it's also important to know that it is the ISO members' role to identify experts and ensure an active voice for their country, and that experts are nominated by the respective national standard bodies. And next slide. Yes.
Yes. So ISO standards are everywhere. If you look at this picture of a bathroom, and I think if you click forward, maybe there will be some standards appearing here. Wet wipes got standards, and just you can continue clicking through here. Vibrators, there's a standards for sex toys, for incontinence product, for the water quality, for the sanitary piping systems, and even for diapers. However, we realized a few years back that no one had been focusing on female health through the lens of standards on menstrual products. So just give you a brief background of how it all started. We can take the next slide. And it actually has already been where we've been working for a long time to get this started. So the idea was initiated back in 2017, actually, when there was a proposal to initiate this work. And we started a Swedish stakeholder group after that, but it wasn't until during 2019 or 2020 that conveners and stakeholders were starting to meet in Sweden, and a lot of manufacturers. We did try to create the standard through getting manufacturers involved. We did not succeed, so we went to something called COPOLCO, which is the consumer policy organization within the ISO. So in other words, the consumer organization of the world, we can call them. And we had a ballot where the countries voted that for the sake of the consumers, we should have standards on menstrual products. So this was passed in December 2022. But even though we've been working on this for a long time, we're still, as Jenny explained, early stage, and we're only at step 4, and there's absolutely room to get involved and room to affect the work. But so what is the work? On the next slide, we can see that what we're trying to do is a standard that has the scope of standardization in the field of menstrual products, covering all products intended for both single and multiple use, regardless of material. So what's important here is that we're actually doing a very wide scope of menstrual products. And the reason the scope, we keep it so open and we don't mention exact products, is that we also want to keep room for innovation. We know we will see a lot of innovation in the coming years in this space, and we want to, of course, make sure that those products can also be covered here. So if you move to the next slide, please. When we started out, there wasn't that many countries joining. I understand that this is not a great list to see on a screen right now, but example is from, I mean, we now have almost 50 countries that have joined together, and Ivory Coast, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Sudan, Uganda, Senegal, and Zimbabwe are actually already involved. So if you are a representative from any of those countries, know that your national standard body has already started engaging in this work, and that there's a group that can be joined. If your country is not in here, we will a little bit later talk about how to get involved also. So please, next slide. So what is this about? Well, I think, Diana, you said it so well. I don't have to repeat what you said, but as we know, in low and middle income countries, a lot of women and girls don't have access to the products they would like to have access to. There's an absence of global product standard that makes manufacturing, retail and trade much more complicated than it should be. And also it's hard to ensure both the safe and fit for purpose for these products. So continuing on the next slide, and again repeating a little bit of Diana's comments, what we can benefit is of course to ensure access in different ways and provide clear information for consumers, so you can actually make informed choices, which is hard today. It's also about raising awareness around menstrual health and getting this on the global health agenda, of course. And also there's a need, and what we started working on is also a common vocabulary to harmonize the language around menstrual product and menstrual product standardization. So of course there's also regulatory benefits, and we would say benefits up to the GDP of a country actually on having menstrual product access to safe and fit for purpose products. We'll share these slides after, so if you want to dig deeper into them, that's easy to do after. So next slide, please.
Yes. So this is Elijah, one of our committee members and experts involved in the work, and he said these wise words when he was interviewed in Copenhagen last year, when we had a meeting with the committee. And there are, of course, different reasons for our experts to participate, but taking part can give you early access to industry information, give your company a voice in the development of standards, and help keeping market access open. So Elijah said here that my country benefits from menstrual product standardization work. It's helping girls, nation, and manufacturers in terms of trade. Standards help to set consistent requirements for quality and safety, so at the end, consumers get products that meet a certain defined quality and standard. And just for your information, if you want to get more insight, we have a committee website, and the link is included here. And we also arranged a webinar last year, and you can also find the recording here. So next slide. So where are we at now? So ISO 13438 are developing two standards, one for general safety requirements, but also a standard for the terminology related to menstrual products. And general and safety requirement standard, that is now an approved new work item proposal, and it's included in the committee's work program. And the standard for the terminology, I believe the voting closes today. So if it's approved, we will establish a new working group within the committee, and that work will be led by Tanya Mahajan, who is also here today. So, and we can move on to the next slide. If you're interested in getting involved, as a first step, you should always reach out to your national standards body. And you can find the contact information at the ISO website. The link is also included here. And when reaching out to them, you should express your interest in getting involved. And this is the only way actually to become a participant in the committee. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me or Gerda or my colleagues Ulrika and Joachim. Next slide. And we also wanted to take this opportunity today to also share with you what support is available for low and middle income countries. We have grants available both for stakeholders. For example, it's possible to receive funding to be able to participate in the face-to-face meetings we arrange, and the next meeting will take place in May in Nairobi in Kenya. And we also have support for national standardization bodies for the NSBs. And this consists of capacity building activities related to this work, such as training, and also, as mentioned in the beginning, we are now starting to work together with ESA and Ghana with a twinning partnership together this year. So next slide. Yes, and we have also included some links to some good to have reference material. And we move on. Next slide. And yes, this is what we wanted to say to you today. So please, if you're interested, get involved by contacting your national standard organization. And Gerda, would you like to say something more?
No, just we hope as many of all of you will join as possible. And if you're having a problem connecting to any of your local or national standard organizations, please just contact Jenny or me, and we will support you in that process as well. So thank you all for listening, and handing over to Sarah.
Yes, thank you so much, Jenny and Gerda. Much appreciated. We can go to the next slide on delay. Excellent. So now I'm very excited to welcome our moderator for the panel discussion, Lowri Davies. Lowri is the project coordinator with the African Coalition for Menstrual Health Management, and she brings 8 years of experience in international development and the humanitarian sector, with a strong focus on partnerships, research, and impact. Her technical expertise lies in health and education, particularly in sexual and reproductive health care and menstrual health, and she has experience working in various countries, including Uganda, Ethiopia, and Nepal. Lowri holds a Master's of Science in Reproductive and Sexual Healthcare Research from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Lowri, I will hand it over to you to introduce our panel.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, moderating the panel with you all today on menstrual product standards. Sorry, I'm just checking my volume is okay. Yes. So we have a really fantastic lineup of speakers with us today who are representing stakeholders in the standardization process. We have representatives from menstrual product manufacturers with us who have been engaged in the standards advocacy process, and they bring firsthand experience of advocating within these frameworks. And we also have a speaker from a national standard agency in Africa who will provide some really important insights into the policy and the technical considerations when shaping these regulations. So to briefly introduce our speakers, we have with us today Elijah Kiwanuka, who is a technical product manager at AFRIpads. He was also briefly introduced by one of our other speakers, but Elijah has experience in menstrual product development, quality management systems, and industry standards for menstrual health, and is also engaged in the ISO process at the national level, representing Uganda. And he's really passionate about creating good quality and sustainable menstrual products. We have with us Francisca Frimpong, who is the Chief Scientific Officer at the Ghana Standards Authority. She has worked 15 years in the standardization process and leads work on developing standards around things such as cosmetics, healthcare, as well as menstrual products. And we also have with us Robert Nyamweya, who is the Product Operations Director at Days for Girls International, where he oversees the life cycle of reusable menstrual products, from quality to supply chain efficiency and compliance with national standards. And he has worked with a range of regulatory bodies across a number of countries to develop and adopt menstrual product standards. And so as I move into the questions with our panelists, I just want to say that a key theme for today's discussion is about how countries can develop effective standards by engaging with the ISO process, as was just spoken about, participating by contributing their perspectives, ensuring alignments with the needs of low middle income countries. And at the same time, a bit of this discussion will look at how SMEs and advocacy organizations and manufacturers can play a role in supporting and strengthening this process. With that, I'll quickly dive into the questions, starting with Elijah. Elijah, I want to quickly frame the conversation with some context. We've seen advocacy efforts around menstrual product standards take shape in several countries, including in Uganda, where AFRIpads has actively been engaged. And as has been mentioned, AFRIpads is also a part of the ISO delegation working on global menstrual product standards. Given that AFRIpads is an SME, we'd love to hear more about what motivated you and your team to step into the advocacy space. What were the drivers behind your decisions to push for national standards? And once you realized as an organization that there was a need for these standards, how did you go about engaging in the process?
Yeah, thank you, Lowri. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah, it is a good introduction from you, Lowri. Thank you so much. I'm Elijah, and I've been at AFRIpads for quite some time. I'll go straight to your question, why we felt the need to get into the advocacy space and how we went about this. So AFRIpads is based in Uganda. We manufacture in a rural setting. And of course, this comes with a few opportunities and challenges. But at AFRIpads, we are driven by the belief that if we can overcome menstrual barriers, we are a step closer to achieving gender equality. So in this process, we always encounter a few challenges, and these challenges led us into the advocacy space. I'll highlight a few of these challenges, or a few of these drivers, starting with the product quality. Within our work, we have been receiving feedback from time to time, and this has not just started recently. From the way back when we had just started, we get feedback from end users who receive poor quality products. And as you all know, poor quality products pose risks which range from very low issues like comfort and as well as severe issues like chemical toxicity, leakage. So with this, we realized end users, to achieve our mission, we need to step in and be able to have like a yardstick or a definition of what a good quality product is. One other point that led us into advocacy is still associated with the poor quality products. There is, I should say, there's still a lot of negative perception about using certain menstrual products, specifically reusable products. At AFRIpads, we started out by the reusable products. This was our primary product. So we used to get a lot of negative feedback, or which comes, or which is perceived, is mainly on how people perceive this product. It is a reusable product. It is not fit for use. But as a business, we realized if there is assurance to the end users, because this negative perception is still within the target users. This negative perception is coming from, let's say, the civil society, the people who should be advocating for this. So realized having a standard in place is one way we can have a crystal clear definition, which defines that this product has been assessed, is being regulated, and it is being manufactured following defined criteria. So in that case, it is a win for us, a win for the end user. For us as manufacturers, we benefit from the market growth. We benefit from the consumer confidence, because when someone knows, like in Uganda, UNBS regulates menstrual products, and we have the Q mark. It is a well-established and respected mark. So this comes with confidence. which goes back to the standard being in place, because without a standard, a product, it gets hard and complicated to assess a product. One other point that led us into advocacy is cross-border business. This has been talked about, but as a manufacturer in line of work, we do operate in Uganda and Africa and many other parts of the world. We have delivered goods to countries outside Africa. But there are always challenges when we deliver, when we want to do business in countries where there are no standards. Menstrual products end up being evaluated against standards that are not appropriate, or general consumer goods regulations, which becomes a barrier, because honestly, as a business or as anyone who wants to do business, we want to see fairness. We want to be sure that a pad is being evaluated for being a pad, not any other regulation. So with a standard, it gets easier for businesses to go beyond borders. With that, Lowri, you also asked a question about how we went about it. This is more close to what Gerda and Jenny has described. So, like I mentioned, in Uganda, menstrual products are regulated by the national standards body. This is UNBS. So for Uganda, we work so close to AFRIpads, like closely. AFRIpads works hand in hand with UNBS, because you can't do a lot without complying with regulations like national standards body. So we reach out to UNBS. We express our need to them. Just a brief background. Before 2017, when a reusable pad standard was published in Uganda, our products were being evaluated against a general standard, which was published, I think, 2009, the East African standard, the EAS 96. And this was a general standard, which was for general menstrual products, and it wasn't so specific to reusable pads. So we reached out to UNBS, our national standards body, engaged them and showed the need for having a specific standard for reusable products. So with these discussions, UNBS was so supportive on this. They got stakeholders on board, had meetings and draft standards. And by the end of 2017, a standard was in place. And the same approach led us to the advocacy we are doing with the ISO TC 338, as described by Jenny. We reached out to UNBS after getting to know that there's work that is being done at a global level. So we reached out to UNBS, who were still supportive and accepted to become an active participant in the technical committee. So UNBS linked AFRIpads to the technical committee, and with that, we have represented our country, I believe, in a good way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elijah. And I think it's really important to have this perspective. Some SMEs may not see the advocacy piece of standards as a priority, but as you've explained, your involvement has been really instrumental in shaping the policies that directly impact your business and other businesses in the menstrual health ecosystem. So thank you for that. I'll move on to Francisca. I want to start by acknowledging the proactive work that Ghana has been doing in developing menstrual product standards. If I understand correctly, Ghana has established a national standard for single-use pads, but more recently we've seen a pivot towards engaging with ISO as a pathway to harmonize standards for reusable menstrual products. And we've seen that through advocacy from organizations like UNICEF and Days for Girls, alongside the Ghana Standards Authority, that there has been really positive momentum in Ghana's participation in the ISO process. Can you share with us what led the Ghana Standards Authority to make that shift, and what the key factors are in encouraging your engagement with ISO, and how you see that process benefiting Ghana and other countries more broadly as they refine their standards?
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible as well.
Yes, you're good, Francisca. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for the question. Hello to everyone. For us at Ghana Standards Authority, we have always been with the ISO. We are full members of ISO, and because of that, we can actively participate in all the technical committees that are set by ISO. We started discussions on the reusable somewhere in 2017, 2018, when we had a group of NGOs coming together to come to us and alerting us on the need to put together a standard for them, because they had been contacted by some manufacturers like Days for Girls, like Inspire Hair, and other manufacturers to try and support them in having a standard to guide the operations of manufacturing reusables. And so when they contacted us, we also started with stakeholder engagement. We needed to bring on board all stakeholders within that sector. And we identified that the nature of the reusable is such that we needed to bring in the regulator. And for us, the regulator is the Food and Drugs Authority, as well as the Ministry for Trade and the Ministry for Health as well, due to the nature of the product. We also brought in the Gender Ministry, because these products were going to be distributed to young teenage girls within rural areas. And so there was the need to also engage them as well. During the engagements, because people were not so used to the product, they had so many concerns, and that was around 2018. Their concerns mainly was on how the product was going to be produced and how hygienic it was going to be for users of the product. Secondly, what kind of water, because we have issues with having potable water. And so what kind of water is going to be used to clean up these products after it's been used? And even how the young girls are going to manage the use of these products in the various schools when they have to change and then keep the product, take it back home to clean. So these were genuine concerns that were raised. And because of that, we had to put discussions on hold to find solutions to some of these issues before we reconvened. Somewhere in 2022, discussions began again, because we saw that on the global front, there was interest in these products. We had started receiving some imports into the country. And so if we are receiving importation of some of these products into the country, why don't we support the local industry to also build that capacity to support the young ladies and young girls within our communities? And so we started discussions again. And during that discussions, we had some further engagements with UNICEF. And UNICEF decided to support us in putting together a standard for reusables. We are almost done. Our last and final meeting, it's going to be on Friday, where we would look at the comments that we received from the stakeholder engagement that we had late last year. And so for us, being part of the ISO 338, it has always been something that we've always wanted, just that we did not have an international committee or an ISO committee for menstrual products. So as soon as we were alerted on the fact that we had a committee for menstrual products, we quickly joined and got experts within that field to also actively participate on that field. So basically, this is what Ghana has been up to so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisca. That's great to hear about your engagement with ISO, and that the relationship has always been sort of in place, and that you're working together with ISO and other actors in Ghana towards a harmonized process. That's great to hear. Otherwise, we'll move to Robert. Robert, Days for Girls has played a key role in supporting the development and adoption of menstrual product standards in several countries like South Africa, Ghana, Uganda, and Kenya. And this work has demonstrated the importance of bringing together different voices in the process. A critical aspect of standards development is ensuring that the right technical expertise is involved. So not just policymakers, but also those with a strong knowledge of manufacturing, supply chain, people like yourself, for example, material safety. From your experience with Days for Girls, what are the best ways to engage these different types of technical experts in the entire process of adopting standards? And how can you ensure that the process is inclusive but also technically robust?
Thank you for having me. Yes, I've been involved extensively in the standards, especially for the reusable sanitary pads in those countries that you have mentioned. We've tried to participate and advocate, first of all, for the standard, then going a step forward for a reasonable standard, a standard that does the work and at the same time is safe, is efficacious, and so on and so forth. Okay, before I delve into that, I would just like to say, yes, why are we doing this? The user, who is the woman or the girl who needs these products, they need safe, comfortable, reliable, affordable products. But how do you ensure that she gets those products? That is where the experts come in. And the experts that we need here, we need the manufacturers, we need the supply chain experts, we need the material safety experts, and as well as the regulatory body scientists and policy developers. Each of these experts have their role. The manufacturers, of course, they check the feasibility of making the product and whether the design, the materials, the production processes, and so on. The supply chain experts look at, the material availability, as well as distributing to the final consumer. And also quality assurance. Quality assurance is in there. How do you ensure that, yes, you should have quality products, at the same time you should have quality finished products that are distributed. And then we have to make sure that we don't have the harmful chemicals or chemicals of concern in the products. So you need the material safety experts. And you also need the public health experts as well as the advocacy groups to make sure that, we are talking about the standards and we are ensuring that the standards are met. Now, there are a few strategies that are employed, to be able to get everyone on board, to get all these experts on board. The first thing is to make sure that the experts are involved at the initial stage of the standard development. If you bring them when something has already been, when a standard has already been put in place, then you will have problems. You'll have something that is not achievable. There are several aspects, like I'll give examples. Allow me to give examples on the reusables that I'm very familiar with. There are issues of like the durability. What does that mean? So you need the experts in place now to discuss and agree and define what durability means and what durability makes sense. There are issues like even talk about the microbiological composition, the issues of the microbiology of the. This is some of the reusable parts, like what we produce. It's like cloth. It's like an underwear. So when you say that it should be free of, and the way it is made, it is stitched and so on. So you can't say that they may not be, because people are touching it, so it cannot be sterile. but the standard says it should be sterile. So you need an expert to actually say this is actually going to be used like an underwear. So the safety, the requirements of the underwear should follow and become what we need as the minimum requirements in this part. So if we don't have those experts to be able to discuss that at the initial stage, then you get a standard which is not achievable. So it beats the whole purpose. So you engage them early, and you also try to get data-driven standards. This is an area which is challenging because we are relying on manufacturers to come up with their data. Some of these tests are very expensive to be able to get a scientist on board. So those are some of the challenges that we have seen, even in the developments that we have seen in the various countries that we have been. So we need that. We need to have the scientists so that they can provide the data, the science behind what we are suggesting. In an ideal situation, we also need to pilot. So you need to identify, even before you roll it out, you need to just pilot and just see how is it going to work. It has, in some places, it has worked where I attend some committees and they say, okay, let's go do this and see how, give us feedback after you've done this. Let's see that. So that is also important. And what your colleagues are doing here today, the ISO and ASO, KEBS, UNBS, trying to harmonize that standard. I think it's very important for us. And that alignment, the discussion for that alignment is good for the standard, because once we have the ISO and it is accepted, then we can manufacture, anyone can manufacture, so long as it is to that ISO standard, then it should be accepted. It is widely accepted. There is also the issue of capacity building, where there have been trainings, like the regulatory bodies sometimes offer trainings, which is a good thing, and it has helped, because once many manufacturers are there, but they don't understand, what does a standard mean? How do you test it? Because you have a manufacturer who doesn't have the capacity to even check something, but with that training, they are able to be provided with the knowledge, or even be shown who can help them in doing what they are supposed to do. Then, of course, advocacy has been big in trying to bring people together, trying to make it a topic of discussion, and then, of course, working with the regulatory authorities to help us to guide the whole process. These are areas where the regulatory authorities need capacity, so that sometimes you're told, if your test is from this country, it's not a stringent regulatory authority, so it cannot be accepted. So there are all those challenges, but all in all, it's in summary, it is early engagement, and then now continuous engagement, as the standard is because we are dealing with very new standards. So as we are using the standards, then now feedback can come in and feed through to the development of the standard, so that eventually we get something that we can all work on. I think, in a nutshell, that is what we have done, and we have tried to bring the people together through the regulatory authority that we have in place. I don't know. I'm open to any questions from the panel if there is time, from the rest of the people if there is time.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. And as you mentioned, engagement of experts from the initial stage is so important in the process, but also as we harmonize standards, that we continue more widely engagement with experts across the sector. Thank you, Robert. So that brings us into the Q&A portion of the discussion. If anybody has any thoughts, please feel free to submit your question using the Q&A box or drop them in the chat. If your question is directed at a specific panelist or any representative from ISO who spoke earlier, please mention their name so we ensure that the question reaches the right person. We have about 10 minutes, so we can dive in. I think that there is a question about whether there is a list of standards for countries to adopt. Maybe that's a possible question for Jenny or Gerda. Let me have a look where exactly the question is. Yes, so Steve, oh, sorry.
Oh, I could just jump in and try to answer that. I don't think, I mean, there's been several organizations that post together lists with national standards that you can draw inspiration from. The ISO is the first attempt to develop international standards across the globe, and that will be most probably published in 2027. So I think there's ways of finding inspiration and find local standards or national standards, but there's no possibility today to find international standards to adopt.
Thank you, Gerda. I think there's also a question specifically from Sarah about products in Malawi and the availability of materials for the production of reusable pads. I'm not sure if anybody feels they're comfortable to answer that with specific reference to Malawi, but otherwise maybe we could, after the webinar, point you to somebody with the right type of expertise, Sarah, unless somebody in the panel feels able to speak on that.
Probably if she's able to contact me, then we can understand what part she's talking about. Then I could advise her on how best to get raw material there.
Okay, thank you, Robert. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Feel free. Anybody who wants to ask a question, please drop it in the chat. Otherwise, is Francisca still on the call? I saw that she dropped off.
No, it doesn't look like
Lowri,
she's back.
Yeah.
Hello. We have a question also on what role standards play on the demand side. So how are standards important in increasing demand for quality products?
Okay, so we know that manufacturers need the standards to guide them in their operations to ensure that they produce quality products for the market. And so without standards, how are they then going to be able to produce quality products? And how do we assure consumers that the products they are getting on the market are of good quality? And so standards are a way of guiding the manufacturer and then protecting the consumer in assuring them that the products they are purchasing and then the products they are going to use, it's of good quality.
Thank you, Francisca. Please feel free, if anybody has any more questions or thoughts, please do share them. Okay, actually, as we are at the hour mark for the webinar, we can move into the closing remarks. I'd like to introduce Tanya. Tanya is the co-founder of Menstrual Health Action for Impact and the co-chair of the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition's Menstrual Health Supplies Workstream. She has over 14 years of experience in addressing systematic barriers to market-related health products and services, and has worked extensively in the intersection of research programs and advocacy for menstrual health in India as well as globally. So I'll give the floor to Tanya.
Thanks, Lowri, and thanks to all of our amazing speakers. I think everyone together has answered our questions of what standards are, why do we need them, and how does one engage with the ISO process. So in my closing remarks, I'll just try and summarize that a little bit and maybe put out a call for action. So I think very objectively, the work that the ISO TC 338 is trying to do here is to create objective benchmarks for what a safe and quality menstrual product is in terms of fitness for purpose as well as safety. And that is both microbiological safety, material safety. It can also be environmental safety, but all aspects of safety. Why is the standards process that's happening at the ISO level important, and why should you as an NSB or anyone working at the national level engage with it? Well, one, I think we are all in consensus with the fact that that these standards are necessary not just to ensure the health of girls and women across the world, but also to support a thriving menstrual product market, which is important to ensure access for everyone. But also because this is the most efficient way of getting a harmonized set of standards globally. I have had the privilege of engaging with standards development in my country, in India, as well as through ISO TC 338. And I think the biggest barrier that national committees face is access to technical experts that can provide input to creation of the standard. And I think the ISO process provides access to a global pool of experts, which is, well, the easiest way one can get access to them. So I think that's the biggest reason for me one should engage with the whole process. And thirdly, if you are working in an LMIC context, I think it's important that we make LMIC voices heard and ensure that the standards that are being developed are representative of the context present in LMICs and the needs of consumers in LMICs. So this is predominantly for me the why. In terms of the how, if you are an NSB, a national standards body, the easiest way to work on standards is to engage right now with the ISO TC 338. If you are a technical expert, an INGO, an advocacy organization, an SME, the easiest way is to engage with your NSB and guide them to engage with the ISO TC 338 process. And that's basically my call to action for this webinar today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanya. And thank you so much to all of our speakers today. We will wrap up for today's session, but just a friendly reminder that today was the first session in the three-part series between RHSC and the African Coalition for Menstrual Health Management. So if you do want to attend the future sessions, one will be focused on leveraging data for market development. That's our next session in March. And then we'll come back together for some conversations around advocacy related both to data and standards in our session in April. So you can use that same registration link that you used today. I just put that link in the chat. And if you do have any questions or anything that you would like to follow up on with any of our speakers today, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. My email is in the registration confirmation that you received today. I'll also drop my email in the chat right now. But thank you all so much for joining. A huge thank you to all of our speakers, and we hope to see you in the next sessions. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.